Good afternoon on what is a warm, bright and sunny day. It is Sunday, April the 10th. I'm back in the reading nook with a nice hot cup of tea, a cat who is not ours, and of course a parcel to unbox. So we'll open up. Let's find out what is in this one. So opening up, what we have here is Tortured Souls number 8, which includes promises. Let's have a look. Does it have 3 colour floor plans in? Yes, it does. So it's complete. So, Tortured Souls was a fanzine, or well, fanzine stroke prozine. Essentially, a prozine was one step above a fanzine. It took the content. It really sort of like the production values and the content got better. It took a step up in quality and content, as opposed to the roughness necessarily of the fanzine. Not that every fanzine was necessarily rough, but this was not a magazine, but somewhere between a magazine and a fanzine. And essentially, Tortured Souls, published by Beast Ends production. Beast Ends would have contribute a number of things to the British role-playing scene, notably of which would have been the boxed sets of campaigns and adventures involving the Doomstones that would ultimately go on to, like, the Watchers of the Sacred Flame, for example, which ultimately would be transferred into a 5-part campaign for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. But this is where they kind of got started, and there were 12 issues of this, and if you can track this down, really do, because there were lots of good adventures, mostly for Dungeons and Dragons and Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, but some also for RuneQuest. So what have we got in here? Issue 8 of Tortured Souls contains the following scenarios, and it really was mostly all scenarios. On a hot summer's day, a wilderness mini scenario for AD&D Basic or RuneQuest. The party are employed to deal with a vicious griffin that has moved into the dukedom and must explore a dried up marsh in the sweltering heat of fire season. Golgoth's Revenge. A demon stirs against the delves of Dorian. A party of courageous dwarves decide to enter the old mine to relieve him of his treasure. Insane action follows in this floor plan based scenario for AD&D or expert, not for the faint-hearted. Contains a free set of floor plans for use with counters or 25mm figures, see centre spread, including the 4 maps of the Demon's Lair, Dwarven Mine, the Abandoned Temple, and a variety of dwarven mining tools and arcane machinery, compatible with other floor plans. If at the time, Games Workshop published box sets of floor plans which you could cut out and use, and they did two floor planner box sets as well, which had were very bare minimum role-playing adventures, typically for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, combined with giant poster maps. One set in a swamp, one set in sort of like a mausoleum slope, essentially stroke dungeon. And then we have the Stones of Pyranassus, a medium level adventure, AD&D adventure taken from the Zeldanor campaign, and that was its ongoing campaign. A wayward prince is being held to ransom by a tribe of humanoids in the Yarga Taurus Sorf Mountains, and the party are sent by his father to get him back, preferably without paying the ransom. And then we have the Seventh Circle, the second in a series of individual one-on-one adventures for single high-level AD&D or expert characters set in the ancient city of Chusa. This issue is an evil sect that needs to be investigated, requiring the services of a cleric of any disposition. And it's got the prices down here. What's interesting here is the prices is that any one issue, £2.95. Subscription for 3 issues, £7.95. Overseas rates, £3.50 for Europe. AML £4.50. So that's a single issue. £9.50 with subscription to Europe, and £12 subscription for AML for elsewhere. And so essentially, this is from Beast Enterprises Limited, Divinity Road in Oxford. So it's even got a postcode there, so you could even go and look at where they were based if you wanted to. I'm not going to show you that, but you can see the prices there on the back. Hello, yes, sorry, cat who's not ours wants some attention, because he's been driven out his greenhouse because my partner's busy in there. So we get inside, and one of the features of Tortured Souls was that it used a lot of coloured paper to differentiate between adventures. So we have actually an advert here for. So this is actually it's got a editorial, which is, by the time you read the editorial, Dragon Meat 85 will all over bar the mopping up of the unfortunate victims of heat exhaustion. So you can see where this was coming out. You're talking 1985. I think I would have gone to Dragon Meat or Games Day or whatever it would have been 1986. That would have been my first when I was trying to think. I would have been 19 or so on. And over the page we have Beast News, for us, Beast Enterprise News, and we've got an advert for The Lost Shrine of Kazakh Khan, which is one of those box sets which the publisher did for AD&D, for big box sets, and they would have included the adventure and floor plans and everything. And we've got more adverts in here. So, for example, we've got adventure for the second edition of Victorian Adventure, which I've not seen, but I've got the copy of the first edition, and I've reviewed that. And Capital, which would have been a science fiction play-by mail game, because they were quite popular during the period as well, and it was something you could do as well as your role playing every week. And then we get into the adventures. And the interesting thing is, there would have been a lot of kind of movement in terms of the authors and the artists and so on, sort of like back and forth between, sort of a bit between Imagine, and there was a lot of similarity between sort of like the look of the content, and also ultimately for GM magazine, which would follow after the demise of Imagine. So here we have the adventure itself, nice, thoroughly laid out, decent illustrations, maps, and floor plans, easy to read. Okay, and then we get into the second lecture, Golgoth's Revenge. A team of dwarfs who are going into the mines to rid them of the evil and to relieve the big bad enemy of his treasure. And then we got nice bit of humour there in the dwarf in the mining cart, and it's one of the things you sort of like. It's almost like fanzine, like you could have things like that. You might necessarily put that in an official. Basically in a proper magazine, it might not get, that's not quite the tone we're going for, but in a fanzine or a prozine, then not so much of an issue. We've got a map of the area basically of the mines, and here, as you've got the explanation below, we begin to see the mines mapped out in nice large detail using those floor plans. I mean, I don't necessarily think that they are fantastically inspiring or that interesting as maps go. I think they're decent enough, because essentially they do kind of regulate everything down to these squares, but that doesn't mean they're not unplayable. Then we have the Stones of Pyrenees. Sorry, there we go. We've got the that change into different coloured paper as we get towards the centre section. And again, a bit of blocks of text there. They're not really well broken up, a little bit dense. And then we get into, we've got the continuing adventure in the middle. I've got a guide to how to use your free floor plans. There we go. So if you're using these there's the tools down below, so I'll just show you those. And there's the big bad there and the main maps. And there's no doubt you would have these out on the table, and they would definitely have an impact. It's a little bit more than you sort of like just drawing it all out. And then over the page we've got the continuation of the previous scenario, also the interruption of which interacted by the floor plans. And then we've got the Seventh Circle, which is there we go. That's the last adventure, and that's the one-on-one adventure with the cleric investigating an evil cult. Now, at some point, I do actually plan, once I've got all of these scenarios to all of these booklets to hand, all the issues of Tortured Souls to hand, I will review these. It's really nice to look at these again. Just have sort of like, it is nostalgia, I admit, but really to give a chance to sort of like go, well, what were these like? To remind people just how good they were back in the day. And I always look at these and wonder, would it be great if these came back to imprint for the old school Renaissance retro clone of your choice, because they could and they would really work, I think. And then at last we have another advert, and this one's important because this really does date it into a particular period. So we have a Game Master from Game Master Publications. This is where British gaming takes off. Something more than a magazine, something more than a module, something that give your players time to get their teeth into. Game Master Publications, every issue contains a complete 32-page module suitable for use for D&D or AD&D, and it's put together by some of the best known and most experienced writers in the country, combining the explosive talents that brought you Imagine Magazine and Tortured Souls. So I said, essentially there was that back and forth between the two. And this is an issue 1, and it promised every 2 months you get basically like an issue. It lasted 4 issues, as I recall. Now why this dates it is because this is post Imagine. This is post Gary Gygax coming across to the UK looking for savings and closing Imagine down. The other reason closing Imagine down famously was because it was critical of TSR content and was too much of an independent voice really inside TSR. We have the mail order form and then the DM's notes for the Zandor campaign. And obviously I'm not really talking about me going off on a tangent and talking about Game Master Magazine. Worth tracking down, I think, because really that magazine, those issues are really extensions of the same team who puts together all of that content for the 30 or so issues of Imagine Magazine. And then also they wrote a lot of the modules that came out of TSR UK. So that's the UK series, and one or two of the later modules for Star Frontiers. And all those are really very well regarded when in the hobby, because they're because it comes down to a difference in sort of like in tone. The American content tends to be a bit flashier, whereas we tend to go for the bit of mud and grit and so on in our fantasy and in our science fiction as well. And that ultimately would see, I suppose, it reaches its apotheosis in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplaying. That fundamental difference between American role-playing fantasy and British role-playing fantasy. What's the difference? And I have been asked this. I have been asked both by a publisher of a grim, dark retro clone of Warhammer. What's the difference? I said, well, when you wander around a grim, dark setting, you know you can have shit underfoot. But that's by the by. This is an interesting parallel magazine publication which ran alongside Imagine and After for roughly 12 issues. Most prozines, most magazines don't last that long, but this is really very good. Anyway, in the meantime, I hope you have enjoyed this unboxing in the Nook. If you have, please click on the like button down below. And of course, if you've got any comments or feedback, then I appreciate you taking the time to post those. And lastly, if you want to be alerted to yet more unboxings in the Nook, where you will see me out here with a package and a book or a game, or in this case, a prozine, which I will unbox and talk about to the best extent of my knowledge for roughly 10 minutes or so, all of course accompanied by a nice hot cup of tea. And in this instance, a cat who is not ours, then please do hit that subscribe button. Okay, in the meantime, thanks again for watching. I'll be back again soon with another unboxing in the Nook. Bye for now.